everyone, my name is Minta Johnson. Today it gives me great pleasure to welcome Geoff Mascall. Is that how I pronounce it, Geoff?
Geoff Mascall, but close enough.
Geoff has worked in the substance misuse field for over 20 years, starting to specialise in it during his nurse training. He has been a non-medical prescriber since 2007 and has extensive experience with a variety of detox regimes. Geoff, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, 20 years in the field, does that make you feel old?
It does, and it's great to see that all those things that people told me in the beginning, that things come around in a 10, 15-year cycle, have actually happened.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's definitely an interesting. So you must have seen a lot then in that time.
A fair amount, yeah, because initially I started working in the community substance misuse services. Okay. What I like to think of as sort of the coalface for most people, NHS services. And more latterly, I've worked in the residential rehab field at private rehabs, which has been a great insight for me. Getting to learn the 12-step philosophy has been really helpful for me.
Okay, and so that wasn't really part of your work within the community then? Was it more harm reduction that you were looking at?
A lot of harm reduction. The idea of moving from abstinence through to harm reduction was a big thing when I was working in the field. And you kind of gave a nod to peers-led support networks. So it was around the time when some of the user groups started to come to the front, and there was a big push on getting people with lived experience into the treatment program. But it was very, very new back then. I think a lot of people didn't really understand how to integrate people with the learned experience, people who had been through treatment, people who understood what it felt like to be waking up at 3 a.m. with a clock, moving into abstinence, and what recovery can actually look like. So there wasn't a great deal of hope around back in the time. There was a lot of maintenance, an awful lot of prescribing to maintain people on methadone and buprenorphine, but there wasn't a great deal of opportunity to move on from that, especially building recovery capital.
And do you find that working in residential treatment settings that idea of sort of learning from peers is almost already set up in a sense that, you know, you'll have people just a couple of weeks ahead of you, maybe a month or so ahead of you in their own recovery sort of journey? It kind of, in that sense, you kind of already got that sort of peer support built in.
Absolutely, and within iCAAD, we do 12 months of aftercare as well. So people really are seeing individuals who not just inside their 4 weeks of stay, but going way beyond that, up to a year afterwards, and how people really change, not just in their physicality, but in their thinking. So that's a huge benefit for people. It's a huge benefit for me. I reached a point working in the community where I was fairly hopeless for my clients coming through. I really couldn't see much of a future for them. So it's been a great eye-opener for me to see people in recovery, to work with people in recovery. Most of my colleagues are in recovery themselves. So that has been really, really quite eye-opening to see the hope that's out there for people. And that's really helped lead my passion into the work that I do. It really has been eye-opening.
I think I completely agree. I mean, I've spent some time sort of volunteering and working bits in the community, and I found it often very frustrating, disheartening, you know, this whole idea of, as you say, it feels hopeless sometimes. And however, in sort of the rehab world and the residential treatment, it doesn't. You do see, like you say, this advancement, progression, people getting well, and in various different stages of getting well, which I think is you know, a wonderful thing. And as you say, the passion comes often from those people who have, you know, who've been through it, and then they know as well, I think, that they stay well by helping other people, you know, so they really are passionate about it because it's their life or death thing for them.
Yeah, for me, it's so important for people not just to focus on the medical. So often in the early parts of my career, it was just about the medicine. Yeah, we touched on the mental health stuff, but quite often that was a mental health team that dealt with all that. So it's been really useful to move beyond the medical and look at the social situations that people are living in, recognizing that drug-related deaths, alcohol-related deaths are going through the roof because we're just not supporting people in a holistic way. There was a big push at the RCGP this year to get the government to recognise the impact that the social housing is having on people. the lack of employment, the opportunities for recovery. There's a lot of people, and especially in socially deprived areas where substance misuse is quite often at its highest, the opportunities aren't there for people to find recovery. So it's been really useful doing the work that I'm doing to help expand that opportunity to engage people and reintegrate them into their families, into the community, give them something meaningful with their day.
And you are a detox expert then, and so how can you tell me how, if at all, detox differs that you've seen from detox experiences in residential rehab and then detox experiences in the community?
There's the obvious stuff. There's that 24/7 support. The number of times I used to go and see someone every day for their alcohol detox when they were living at home, and you'd get to maybe day 3, 4, 5, and before you knew it, they were starting to drink again. There just wasn't that support around them all day long. In the residential setting, yeah, you can hold someone. You can sit and have a cup of tea with them at 3 o'clock in the morning when they're going through their demons. But for me, the biggest shift that I've seen is this aging population. People are living longer, which I think is great. Clearly, the work that's happening in the community is working. It's helping people survive longer. But now we've got a whole new set of challenges. We're seeing an aging population with all the physical complications that brings. We're seeing them with more comorbidities. So things like diabetes, the body is just aging and going through that normal process. Quite often people have had poor dietary intake, poor medical interventions over the years, or lack of them, because they've been using their substances and that's where their focus has been. So there's a lot more complexities coming through from a medical perspective, and all that at the same time that the opportunities to access things like inpatient treatment, they're diminishing significantly. I don't think there's more than a handful of inpatient units available to the NHS in the UK right now. And that's really sad to see. That's really sad to see. So yeah, there's a lot more emphasis on the frontline practitioner to deal with complexities, and you're always managing risk. Detox is all about risk and how much you can give somebody, how safe it's going to be for them to take that detox. So yeah, it's putting a huge strain on the services, not just as the frontline practitioner and the stresses that brings, but also in terms of the knock-on effects. If things do start to go wrong, you are going to need that NHS bed.
And do you detox people in-house at iCAAD?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you find when you're detoxing people at iCAAD? What are the most difficult things people are facing during that detox period?
One of the hardest things is the awakening, is the realization. And it's normally around day 3 when someone really starts to come to, and you see that life come back into their eyes. And that's when the demons really start bearing their head. Gabor Mate said, ask not why the addict, ask why the pain. And it's that pain that is the most difficult to help someone sit with. In the early days of detox, it's way too early to start doing any trauma work. And yet all of the work we do is about trauma. It's about holding that trauma, recognizing that trauma, not jumping straight into the deep end and trying to resolve it all straight away, but really just getting to a place where someone can sit with it, as uncomfortable as that is, and just hold that feeling. And that's what a lot of the therapy is focused on, is about helping someone get through today.
Absolutely. And so do you find that if people are struggling with that, as you say, day 3 is about pretty much when they sort of come back to life, as you put it, but I think it's maybe from my experience and from what I've seen, it's kind of day maybe 7 to 10 that they start to be able to engage in that therapeutic process and, actually get benefit from what's happening in group sessions and around them. Do you think that 4 weeks is long enough then, if 10 days are taken up by, I guess, the detoxification?
For me, recovery is that lifelong principle. The longer someone's in treatment, the longer someone's going to be remaining abstinent afterwards, hopefully. Perfect world, I would love to see people coming through for 90 days, for 6 months, for 12 months, and just really engaging in depth in that treatment process. But at the same time, it's difficult for people to step out of work for that long. We live in a capitalist society, so this is going to cost people money. or most of the time it costs money. And that's where I really have a newfound recognition of the work that happens in the fellowship, in smart recovery, in free recovery, where it's not just about how much can I afford to buy from my recovery, but actually how much am I willing to invest? How much of my time goes into it? How much of my freedom am I going to put into gaining more freedom?
That's brilliant. That's a lovely way to look at it, actually. And I completely agree with you. So thank you so much, Geoff, for your sort of thoughts and insights. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience?
Well, it's just thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak to you today.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on our show today. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
My name is Araminta Johnson, and you have just joined me at the most recent iCAAD iTalks. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you and my guests here today. If you'd like to access any other resources, you can do so at www.icaad.com. Thank you, and see you all soon.